Tomorrow morning we'll go through the scriptures here, but I'm just going to give the overview. Jeremiah 30, we're going to start, Isaac and I are talking about where to start with this. Jeremiah 31:30 says, what's the prophecy? Jeremiah 31:30. Prophecy.
Can we read it?
Huh?
Should we read it?
Yeah. Oh, Hadassah. Where's your new Bible?
Sorry, I didn't bring it.
It's too new.
I know. Yeah, I guess you do have your Bible.
Jeremiah what?
31:30. Yes.
You want to get your Bible out?
What?
There's 31.
And Jeremiah 31:31 says, "A new day is coming, and now says Jehovah, I will make a new covenant with the people of Israel. I will also make it with the people of Judah. It will not be like the covenant I made with their people long ago. That was when I took them by the hand. I led them out of Egypt. But they broke my covenant. They did it even though I was like a husband to them. And now says Jehovah." And goes on.
Yeah, here's the part. It's in 33.
Keep reading.
"This is the covenant I will make with Israel. After that time, and now says Jehovah, I will put my law in their minds. I will write it on their hearts. I will be their Jehovah, and they will be my people."
Nice.
And they will be my people.
You see there's two covenants. One was made and they broke it, and the other one is coming. And what's that coming with? It's going to come with something very special, because he's going to write it on our hearts. And there's other areas that talk about he's going to send his rock to move us, as you all know, move us to keep his covenant. And that's what his covenant law, that's what's happening to us, is we're being moved to do that, right? So he's only made two covenants with Israel, and I call them contracts, like I talked yesterday. So they broke the first one. I think it's the Hebrews, he talks about how the old one was, and this is where Shaul or Paul is hard for people in that time to understand. That's why Peter says, "Oh, Shaul, Paul's hard to understand." It's because Paul's trying to unpack the change. He's trying to get Israel to understand what happened at the cross and what was done away with and what remains. There's something that remains, but something was done away with. And he talks about a superior covenant. Okay, and so he says in there, and there's no need for a new one, sort of thing. He talks about this, and then he said that the first one was made with a fault. It actually says that in there. It was made with a fault. Yahovah made a fault in that first contract. It's pretty cool. He had to create a fault in that first contract. What was the fault? Okay, how are we not? We're different than them in one way. Like, we're on this side of the new covenant. Yahshua, what was the gift of Yahshua?
His sacrifice, his blood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Ruach.
Yeah.
It's Ruach. The Ruach is to move us. Do we move ourselves? No. We say, yes, we have free will. Absolutely free will. But the Ruach is the one that moves us. Did he outpour the Ruach in the first covenant? No, that was the fault he made. Why did he do that? Because he had to get, at some point, Israel was going to have to break that covenant, because he had to get Yahshua to pay for original sin. And so what happens in the Abrahamic covenant, if you see that, a lot of Christians teach that there was no death penalty in the Abraham covenant, but there was. There was a death position that was made. You see, and I know I'm rambling, I'm going a lot of different places, but when Abraham and Yehovah made that covenant, do you remember? He cut the animals in half, the bloodbath, blood ratified. This is another thing. There is a proposal. There is an acceptance. So there's a proposal. Will you marry me? Yes, I will. You're on the proposal. You have a proposal and acceptance, and you have a covenant confirming meal. Those four things have to remain. Thank you for taking me back there. That's where I was. Thank you. Okay, so Abraham. Okay, so remember how Yahweh wants to make it. He promises Abraham. He's like, I'm going to give you, as many stars in the sky, as many sons as stars in the sky. make you a huge nation, blah, 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 and I'm going to give you all this land, right? And he says it in there, if you read it, he says it in there like 3 times. And so Yahweh is actually saying to him, I think it's Genesis 13, I'm going to give you all this land. I'm going to give you all these kids. And Abraham's old. He has no kids. He's got, okay, really? Okay. Really, I'm going to give you all this. Really? Okay. 3 times, I think it's in there. At the end of 3 times, Abraham says to Yahweh, prove it to me. Put your name on the dotted line. I want to know for sure that you're going to do this. Make a covenant with me. And, well, Yahweh decides to make a covenant with him. That's when, on Abraham's request, Yahweh enters into this covenant. So he says, go get these animals, split them in half. Don't break the bones of the birds. It's all going to represent how Yahshua is going to look in the end. And then he takes Abraham. Does Abraham walk through those pieces? No. He puts Abraham into an awake trance to watch what's happened. What goes through those pieces? Remember?
Lantern.
2 things.
Fiery furnace.
Fiery furnace. And the lantern goes through, or the torch actually goes through. Who's the fiery furnace? Who is the all-consuming fire? YHVH Elohim. We have to get through the all-consuming fire. On a tangent, that's one reason that we go through the trials that we go through, is to make us into pure gold. Gold, silver, metal will go through that fire, right? All right, so the furnace goes through. That's YHVH. And who else goes through? The torch, the light of the world, Yahshua HaMashiach. He wasn't HaMashiach at that point, but Yahshua went through 2 entities. Okay, so if somebody says there's only 1, forget it. There's 2. He was always there from the beginning, so was the Ruach. There's always been 3. So the 2 go through, they make the deal together. And why do they do that? Because if Abraham had gone through Abraham's descent, Abraham might have been fine, but his descendants would have broken that at some point, and then the death would be nothing. Because when you go through like that, somebody has to die. If they break, the idea is if one of those 2 people who walk through those pieces break the deal, whatever they're making, they die. If Abraham had died, big deal. No big deal. If Yahshua goes through on Abraham's behalf, then if Abraham or any of his descendants break it, he is the one that dies. That's beautiful. Because he's eternal, because he's like God, he's the perfect one, right? So when somebody says, oh, I should have been the one to die on the cross. No. I'm glad he died. Because without that, we're toast. None of us could do what he did. Okay, so the 2 go through. He attached a death position to that Abrahamic covenant. And a lot of people say that there wasn't a death position. Really? You're making a covenant to die. If one of you breaks it, he puts that. It's like, duh. It's so simple. We make it so complicated. So there's a death position attached to that Abrahamic covenant. Now there's Dr. Perry talks about a promise. That was the guarantee that was the promise was coming. What was the promise that was coming? What was the thing the answer to the promise? He uses 3 terms in here: guarantee, promise, and answer. It's pretty cool. But in the end, it was, I'm going to call you out into be a nation of priests for me. I'm going to raise you up into be my people, and you're going to be my royal nation, priests for me, and I'm going to send you out into the world to do my work, to bring people into covenant with me, contract with me, so that more people can get to the happily ever after and come into the family of Yahweh and the Commonwealth of Israel. So the answer came later at the base of Mount Sinai when they entered into that contract. They entered into that contract. Then what happened 40 days later? They broke it with the golden calf incident. That's what, when Moses went up to the mountain, got the tablets of stone, he came down, he saw what they were doing, he breaks the covenant. Did you know that it says in the scriptures that the law was written on both sides of the tablets of stone? It wasn't just on the front side, it says both sides are covered. And so when I look at that, I'm looking at like the whole covenant is on there, not just 10. It wasn't just 10, the whole thing. Feast days are on there. So he takes it and he breaks it, symbolizing that they broke the contract that they made. Oh gosh, they could have gone so much longer than that. They could have had it really good for a long time. Eventually they would have broke it because it was set with a fault, because it didn't have the record with, man, 40 days, that's it? Israel? Really? Oh my gosh. So at that point they broke it. What did Yahweh tell Moses to do after that? Moses pleads for their life. yada yada. 3,000 people died that day at the sword, at the hand of people who didn't celebrate. Unbelievable. Those who didn't take part in that not pagan, that it wasn't pagan, but the idea of Aaron set aside a day that wasn't established by Papa. He made a celebration day. He made the golden calf, pagan thing. And then, but what did, and then those people who didn't partake in that had to slaughter their neighbor. I mean, how insane was that?
Do you think the golden calf was a replacement for Moses, which they thought had lost?
Bingo.
Yes, they needed
Absolutely, a mediator between them and Elohim. So they didn't really like say, you know, thumb their nose at Yehovah and say you don't exist. They wanted that mediator.
And that's what modern churches are, is that mediator that stands between us and God and interprets God for us. Where he says, I don't need a mediator except for Jesus.
Which is what they were doing, like at the beginning. Remember, he's yelling down because he wants a relationship with just you, me. I mean, he wants a priesthood. He wants you're going to be a royal nation of priests is what he uses. The term is you're going to be my Melchizedek priest. And he never intended for Moses to be between us and him. He yelled down the 10, and it's Israel that said, you're scaring us. Don't talk anymore. We'll tell Moses. And it's like, now on this side, Yahshua is bringing together his Melchizedek priesthood, and now each one of us is responsible to him. There's no one between you and Yahshua. He is the one that you're responsible to. And if there's one between us and Yehovah, it's Yahshua between us and Yehovah, if there is. So they broke this, but what did Yehovah tell Moses to do? Because we ended up with the commandments, the covenant written on stone again. But how did that happen?
Moses was the one that wrote it, not God.
I know Yehovah wrote it, but Yehovah
He
said,
made
go
him
get
carve
some
it out.
tablets of stone, bring it up to me, and I'll write it on. So symbolic of the second time, the second covenant that was going to come after Yahshua, you can bring our hearts up to Yehovah, and he would write his law on our new hearts. So super symbolic. Same law. There is only one law that Yahweh Elohim has spoken. Only one law that Israel agreed to, or that Yahweh did the proposal and then we agreed to and had a covenant confirming that there's only one. Exodus 19 through 24. Now, just quickly, I want to read you Dr. Hooker's insert in a second to close, but quickly, there's what's called Melchizedek issues. Melchizedek issues are things that are not actually seen in the law, such as food issues. We all know we're supposed to eat kosher, right? Why do we know that? And why do we know that's part of that law and not part of the Levitical law? It's because it was before. We see evidence of Noah understanding clean and unclean. Okay? So that's a Melchizedek issue, which means it's part of the original law. Okay? We also see later on in the Torah, or in what people call the Torah, in the Levitical law, explanation of that Melchizedek issue. So you look at that and you go, oh yes, okay, I need to understand what the Levitical law is saying about being kosher, because Moses understands clean and unclean, but nowhere before the Levitical law is it unpacked. So, but it was an issue. So we see that it's something that was originally part, and it was passed down. That law has been passed down. I contend that it absolutely was one of the hardest things, in my opinion, that it was a hard thing for Papa to write down the law. I really believe that, because he is love. Love is other-centered. And the last thing that you want to do is write down how to love me. I mean, how would you like to give your spouse a list of how to love you? Mm-hmm. It takes it from something you spontaneously do to a line item, am I doing? And it had so much potential, and there is so much potential for just doing it, grinning and bearing and doing it, and a lot of people do that. And I think a lot of Messianics do this. So when you're looking at the law and the story, Yahweh's heart and Yahshua and his work, love, the way they defined it, is at the heart of it all. That's the point, the way they define it. I'm not talking about tolerance. I'm not going to talk about how the world defines love, but how he defined love in his law. So what he's saying is like, this is how you're going to love me. This is how you're going to love others. And in the end, he says too, if you don't love yourself, you can't love anyone else. So the idea is, it's just a beautiful, beautiful wheel within a wheel within a wheel. Anyway, so when we get to, I know what I wanted to tell you. Okay, so we see the Book of the Covenant. And there's two words in there. It's interesting. Brit and Torah, two different words. Torah is law, Brit is covenant. So Moses in there in Exodus 19 or Exodus 24, he basically writes all these words down in the Book of the Covenant. Then you find in Deuteronomy, write all these words of the law, the Torah, and place that scroll where?
Outside of the ark.
Thank you. On the outside of the Ark of the Covenant, on the outside. And Matthew Nolan, who actually started preaching this after this book came out, Matthew Nolan has researched, it's a pocket on the outside of the Ark of the Covenant that you put this extra law in as a, what does Yahweh say? Put it there as a witness against you. What is he witnessing? What is that thing witnessing? That extra law is witnessing that you broke my covenant. You get this extra law because you broke my Melchizedek law. Right?
Are we under both Abrahamic and Melchizedek?
We were, okay, not Abrahamic. We were under Dr. Perry, who you remind me a lot of, by the way. he talks about it as two umbrellas. One big umbrella is the Melchizedek priesthood, Melchizedek law. Always been, always will be. He had to write it down in human words, with human situations, kind of, because you see how to deal with Hebrew slaves, all that stuff, which obviously didn't exist prior to humanity. Okay, but then underneath you have this temporary law, another umbrella called the Levitical law, which is what was outside the Ark of the Covenant, set as a witness against you. Two laws. They were always under. Israel the world, all humanity has always been under this other one. Okay, it got words 2,000 years into our history, but the temporary one was that little one that went away with Yahshua. Okay, so when in Colossians, what is it, 2:18 says that our what was nailed to the cross. Everybody says, Christians say all the time, they're like, well, it was how do they say that? The Sabbath was nailed to the cross, or our sins, our transgressions were nailed to the cross. Really? That's not what it says. It's so simple, but they just want to complicate. No, what was nailed to the cross it says what was set against you. It's the same language as in Deuteronomy. We see this is what was set against you. It's on the outside of the Ark of the Covenant. So at Yeshua's death, the thing that was set against us was done away with. That was the extra law that was on the outside of the ark.
And that's what the Messianic movement is trying to embrace.
Yes.
Let's go back to the Abrahamic.
They're trying to embrace the Mosaic Law.
Yeah, the Mosaic Law, which is an extension, would you say, of the Abrahamic?
I would say it's added.
And a man-made addition.
No, not man-made. It's added by Yahweh for a time. Because you see it in there. Yahweh says to Moses, this is what I want you to do. No, it's not man-made, and it wasn't bad. It was for a time. It's extra heavier? Yes. Yeshua said he came to give the light law, right? My burden is light, blah, blah, blah. So when you see after the golden calf incident, you see more law come. Yahweh, and prime example is the tzitzit, wherein after Israel sinned, you see later Israel cannot remember anything. They can't remember Yah's words. He's screaming them down from the mountain, yelling them, speaking them, whatever it was, and they can't remember. So what does he say? He gets frustrated. If you read there how those tzitzits came to be, he's mad, he's angry, he's frustrated. He's like, okay, Israel, you can't remember. I'm going to put something on your garments for you to remember. Every time you see those tzitzits, it means you need to remember to keep my law. Okay? And so that's why and he says in there, put it on to remember to keep my law. We are on this side of Yeshua. What is written on our hearts? Do I need help with an external something to oh wait. Oh man, should I stop by? Should I stop by the bar tonight? I don't know. I really don't know. I really want. Oh, I see the zitzi. No, I shouldn't. You know. Oh man, should I keep Shabbat? I don't know. I really want to go on Sunday, but I shouldn't. Oh, I see in the mirror. Oh, a zitzi. No, I shouldn't. Really? Go. I'm sorry, but we threw a Purim and Messianics we have, the one reason we do not have a full thing here is because we have purposefully separated ourselves from Messianics. The one reason we do not hang out with where your friends hang out, they're hanging out with some of our very, very good friends. Built a shop. I love them. They came to the first feast. It's a long story. Blah blah blah. They are responsible for our exit. Like they put Michael Rood's DVDs on our VHSs on our porch. So I love them to death. But they have crowds come. They have hundreds of people right now. But it's because they're grabbing the Messianic people. We have very few because nobody in this area likes us because we're teaching this. And it's been very difficult to get friends because there is a dividing point. We can't go to their stuff because they end up talking about this. They end up so we're throwing a Purim at the Coeur d'Alene Library. So we've got the downstairs big thing. We're so excited. This is when we're naive. This is when we're doing a separation and everybody's finding out who we are and everything and what we want to preach. And we think everybody wants this. We think everybody is like so excited. Okay, we're going to find out what Yahshua did. We're going to find out what our job is. We're so excited about this Melchizedek priesthood, and everything. So we throw this big Purim thing, and a bunch of Messianics come, of course, and they're friends, per se, kind of hang out in different places, kind of see. And, we go to one thing, and we're like, okay, well, we probably can't go there again. We try not to burn. I'm going to read this to close. One thing I just wanted to tell you, has anybody studied Ron Wyatt?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay, so there is an animation that we ran into, I don't know, a couple years ago,